Have you heard of the new addition to the Go for Donnie podcast? I haven't either, but it's called Switch to Channel 2. That is where Donnie will get to ask his guests some questions, so you, the listener, get to know them better. And remember, hashtag HTFU.
Hey guys, welcome back to Switch Channel 2, where we have Mike Duffy, our guest today, to go over a few things, to ask you a few questions. But I want to talk about your history first, Mike, because we go back to when you worked at Painless Productions. I was at MTV2 back in 2000 something. And
At least it wasn't the 1900s.
Yeah, the 19th, right? And then after that, we kind of went on our ways. And then it feels like I kind of followed you to a few places because I went to T Group. I did a show T Group when you were there. And I think there was a tail end. You just left T Group. And then I went to Zodiac and did a few shows at Zodiac. And then you left Zodiac. And then I didn't follow you. So that's pretty cool. I was just looking at that.
That is cool, man. I don't know if I don't know if I realized that you went over to Zodiac. Yeah, RDF became Zodiac. Zodiac bought RDF. I'd gone on to work at after I left Zodiac. I went to work at Electus with Ben Silverman, where I ran the Walmart and Procter and Gamble branded content family initiative, which was really cool, really cool, and really was the beginning of my exposure to brand funded content, which is a lot of what I'm doing these days with Yum Crunch.
Ooh, can't wait for that transition. Ooh.
But I know, me too, right? You mean actual money flooding back into, creating entertainment? Can't wait for that. We're working on it, Donnie. We're working. We have to prove to them that the ROI is there. But yeah, that's so funny. I mean, T Group was a great place. What did you work on when you were at
T Group? I jumped into Mystery Diners season 2. Rick got me to come in and rap. Supposed to have him on soon. Yeah, then Peter was
yep, that's right.
The showrunner.
Showrunner. Yeah. Oh my God, Mystery Diners. Yeah, I was at T Group for 1 year. Jenny Daly was on maternity leave. I had worked at Electus. I left Electus because the CEO at the time, who had come in after Ben Silverman had hired me, the new CEO came in and had lost his damn mind. And I basically was like, I was several years older than him, saw this coming from a mile away, and basically said, all right, I'm out. I was waiting for Tim, my brother, to come out of his deal at Spike so that we could launch our production company, Ugly Brothers Studios. So I was having breakfast with Jenny Daly, and she was like, I'm about to go on maternity leave. Would you come in and run T Group for a year? Can you make a year commitment to me? And I thought, you know what? I love Jenny, and she's so talented, and she had 6 or 7 series going at the time. Like, that sounds great. What a great sort of precursor to me launching my production company with my brother. So I went and worked at T Group. Mystery Diners was one of those shows that I inherited, and I'll never forget on Mystery Diners. So my first show that I ever created was a hidden camera show, and I was devoted to authenticity and hidden camera, not faking everything. But one day on Mystery Diners, like, I had just inherited the show, and so I show up on set, and a showrunner who shall remain unnamed right now, not the one we mentioned earlier, greets me. It's 4:00, and we're shooting dinner service that night at this restaurant in the Valley, and I'm like, all right, well, I'll show up around dinner time, right, so I can be there for the full dinner service. I get there, and the showrunner comes out and meets me, and he goes, we're good. We wrapped for the day. And I go, what are you talking about? He goes, yeah, we're good, man. We got everything we need. We got all of our beats. And I said, well, it's a dinner service. Like, what about the in-between stuff? What about, I get that you shot some segments, but let's get some actuality too. And he goes, well, we don't do that. And I went, well, how are you going to intercut the beats that you got with reality stuff so that it all kind of comes together cohesively. Because, dude, we don't do that shit. We now just shoot to a script and we just fake everything. And I was like, are you fucking kidding? So I'm like, well, I don't like this. I don't think this is the way to do it. Sure enough, we get all these episodes into post, and the network was like, this is totally fake. And I said, yeah, I inherited this show. This is the model that they did. Anyway, we ended up getting rid of that showrunner and bringing a new one in who was more devoted to at least pretending to get, actuality. So you could kind of, fill in the liminal spaces of the story and convey.
It's such a hard show to shoot, though. You think about it. You think about if you're to do it like without anyone knowing. I mean, here you have like 30 people showing up, setting up these security cameras.
Yeah.
That are, Pelco cameras on like these sticks, and it was just funny. And we were outside with that trailer. We had a trailer from we toured around the U.S.
Yeah,
with everything,
all the production gear. Yeah.
And then the towers they fell over. Oh man, it was bad. It was bad. Like they, I don't know if you remember in back. That's where they had the racks. And they weren't secure, and I think one of them fell over and did some damage. But we'd roll up in that thing, and it looks like a control room. It's a control room. It's a rolling control room.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like you could hide, in plain sight.
No, and I think at the time, this is like post Jamie Kennedy experiment and Punk'd, right? And the thing in Punk'd is like they had a whole production conceit, right? And it was. A lot of times, if they had to really trick somebody, it would be what was called exposed camera, where you would justify a camera being in the scene. So you'd say something like, you're going to be interviewed on an entertainment show. And then what would happen in that setting would be, some crazy hidden camera hijinks. And so it was, there were cameras hidden, but you had, you could deny that it was a hidden camera show because there was also a camera right in your face.
Right.
And that was the thing with Mystery Diners. I always sort of was, well, how can we deliver authenticity? Because there's a point where this audience is going to reject this. And they did. And I think that, not to get too philosophical or even political, but I think that we were tricking audiences, and I'm sure you talked, and when you guys did Duck Dynasty, famously Duck Dynasty kind of fell apart because audiences started realizing that these were scripted scenes. You guys did an amazing job telling those stories on Duck Dynasty, you and Tucker and that whole group. And it was obvious to us that it was scripted, but it didn't matter because it was done really well. But the audience, when they realized that this was scripted, they felt betrayed. Yeah. And I remember that is the demarcation point in reality TV was Duck Dynasty, when the fans rejected that show because it was scripted and they were told it was unscripted. And here we are living in a post-truth era, and those same audiences, right, are now being tricked again.
Well, it's coming back, right? I heard Duck Dynasty is coming back.
It is coming back, without the questionable uncle or whatever. But,
Sigh.
Right?
Oh, yeah. Yep.
But it's this is what, it's like The Apprentice, right? So many friends that worked on The Apprentice and had to fake, Donald Trump as a great businessman. They had to put words in his mouth. They had to cut around his imperfections and all that. And so what was portrayed on The Apprentice for many seasons was this picture of this iconic, extraordinary businessman. And here we are, bamboozled, right? And I really look back to those times in unscripted television where we were essentially lying to our audiences, putting up the ideal, but, hiding the imperfections. And I think we're paying for it right now. Not to overemphasize our contribution to the current situation, but I think there's some truth to that.
Yeah. Yeah, I could see that. It's so sad. It's just entertainment, when entertainment goes a little too far. Or you can see right through it.
yeah, the thing is, like, we're just making entertainment.
Yeah.
We didn't think this would turn into a political movement, of course. No, no, all the folks that we know who worked on those shows, like, for the most part, except for a couple that we know, the intentions were just to create entertainment.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the new Duck Dynasty and how they make that show.
Is it going back to A&E since they own it?
I'm not sure.
Hmm.
I think Wheelhouse is involved, right?
I think so. We talked about it briefly. We didn't really say who is, because he's not attached to it or doing anything.
Yeah.
I'll find out. I'll get the 411.
Yeah.
I'll get it
Compare
out now.
notes.
Yeah. So we briefly talked about your start in the industry. You said you moved out as a comedian. So you moved from Philly out to California to be a comedian. That was how you got your start in the industry?
Yeah. I had always dreamed of moving to Los Angeles. I knew that entertainment was going to be my career. I didn't really think as a kid that it would be on the performer side, though. But when I was in college, I started kind of, I was in high school, I was in musical theater. And then in college, I did a bit of musical theater. You did as well, right?
I was in high school. I was a choir boy, choir nerd in drama.
Yeah, exactly. So in college, I had a lot of fun. I went to Penn State. We used to throw these big parties and we would have bands there. And I would introduce the bands and I would do Chris Farley impressions or, whatever. I was just the idiot drunken college kid grabbing a mic and I really liked it and it was really fun. And so I realized that was like the beginning of me sort of, testing the waters as a stand up. So when I came out to Los Angeles, I had a headshot,
Nice. Oh, wait. Is that headshot up in any like barber shop or any like, how they haven't like the dry cleaners or anything like that? Is it up anywhere?
No, when I say I had a headshot, I mean I had one headshot.
Oh, that's it.
And I made copies of it and would send the copies to, the different casting directors.
Isn't that amazing how far we've come from you sending out actual copies of your headshot? Like a copy, like mailing it to someone or dropping it off. Oh, that's hilarious.
Oh my God, dude. So I came out here and I started doing open mics and really enjoyed it. Really loved writing, loved creating new material and finding my voice. And I went after it really hardcore. I mean, I was, doing stand up, 6 or 7 nights a week, sometimes 2 or 3 shows a night. I was producing live comedy and that was how I got so much stage time. I had met a few guys who were doing the same thing and you would barter for stage time. So if I ran a show over at Amagi's and, at Sunset in Gower, I'd put a few guys up who had shows over in the Belly Room at the Comedy Store or at the Improv or whatever it is. And we would just trade stage time so we could get as much stage time as possible. So I advanced really quickly as a stand-up and I developed my material really, really quickly. And so when I finally did audition for Mitzi Shore at the Comedy Store on one of their, I think it was Sunday night audition nights, you had open mics and she would watch and she would greenlight, people who could then become part of the club. And you'd start as a door guy and you'd work the cover booth or you'd check IDs, whatever it is, and you'd get paid $15 a night and, you'd get some stage time if you were lucky. And so that's how I got into stand-up.
That's a grind. Yeah.
But it was, at the time you're just like a crackhead, like looking for stage time. So I was really lucky to be, immersed in all of that at a time where I could, find my voice quickly and then really just hammer it. And it was an amazing time. I mean, I look back on it. I was really proud of what I did during that time, but I'm also really proud that I stopped because I didn't have that hunger to be, a road dog, somebody who's a touring comedian. I wanted to have a family. I wanted to buy a home. I wanted to build a career. And I just didn't feel that path was as in control, by me as, I could sort of follow another path and have a bit more control and in my destiny.
Wow.
So I never looked back after quitting stand up in 2001 and it's really served me so much in my career.
that you can look back and see what it's done for you. I mean, obviously, you're a great speaker. I mean, it's not easy for a lot of people to talk just in front of a few people, let alone a crowd, let alone a microphone, and that's where they nut up. Where, like you, I mean, I grew up, in school, like always wanting to be the DJ or announcing or, after when I was in the Army, I was a DJ, so I always had a microphone. So I was comfortable talking in front of a microphone and in front of people, no problem. Now, after I would say something to people, I wouldn't know what I said. You'd be like, what just happened?
Yeah.
But no, it gives you confidence. I mean, especially when you have to talk to, a room full of people and be competent, and not just say something fucking weird or stutter. I have a stuttering problem sometimes when I'm trying to get things out. It's really weird where I just can't think of the word, but thank God for my medicine. My medicine helps slow me down a little. Slows my roll. All right. So you started as a comedian. What was your first gig in production? I mean, before you got to the GSN.
So my first gig was, I moved with my buddy from Philly. I moved into a studio apartment in Hollywood over at North Orange, between Franklin and Hollywood Boulevard.
Perfect part of Hollywood.
And at the time, the theater, like the Kodak Theater, what is it called now? It's not the Kodak. Kodak's not a thing. But anyway, where they have the Oscars, the Chinese theater and all that is right there. Well, none of that. The Chinese theater was there, but that big complex right there at Hollywood and Highland, that was not there. It was a giant empty parking lot, and it was ghetto, man. It was so ghetto. We lived in a studio apartment, 3 of us, and then 4 other guys moved in with us. And we basically just started getting each other jobs. My buddy worked on Kids Say the Darndest Things.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
And he crashed. He was driving the cube truck, for returning, picking up and returning rentals and things like that, all the camera gear, the stage and all that. And so he ended up crashing into the side of a building at Sunset Gower Studios, which is now Netflix. And his boss goes, you can't be driving that. I'm going to put you in as a PA on set. Do you know anybody who can drive a cube truck? And I grew up, as a landscaper. That's how my brother and I put ourselves through school. We always made money during the day, awesome. Driving, being on landscaper crews and driving the trucks and everything. So I knew how to drive a big truck. So that was my right. So my buddy goes, dude, good news. I crashed the truck and you're the only one I know who can drive it. So if you want the job, it's yours. So I took the job. That was my first job, driving a big cube truck for Kids Say the Darndest Things and getting coffee orders and picking up parts of the stage and lighting and all that stuff. I love that.
See, builds character. It builds character, Mike. My first gig in the industry, you probably saw me at the front desk at MTV.
Oh yeah,
I answered. So I went through this whole thing with my previous job driving trains, and
that's right. You were a train engineer.
Yeah, and ended up answering phones at the front desk at MTV Networks for the summer
in Santa Monica.
In Santa Monica, and then I was like, oh, this was fun, and now I gotta, actually want to do something, and then moved upstairs. But oh
my God, I forgot about that. I remember you sitting at that desk. I remember meeting you at that desk for the first time, and you were amazing and as gregarious as you always have been.
Well, thank you. It was fun. The thing that sucked is having to reinvent yourself and figure out what you're going to do. And so starting in the industry at 31, 32, for me, just, I don't know, it felt like I was just so far behind that I'd really, catch up. But yeah, it was really cool transitioning and telling some people I answered phones at the front desk. So what? Just like right. you dig ditches or you drive a truck or, whatever you do to get to where you are.
I totally agree, Donnie. I mean, just to unpack that for a second, I remember, those of us who sort of were always just hard workers, self-starters, you drove a train, you were in the military, you had to get it done. You showed up, whatever the job was. If you were assigned that job, you were going to be the best, person for that job, no matter what, and no matter what it was. And I completely agree with that. I've always embraced that as well. one of the things I also realized early on in my career, because when I created my first show, I was 27 years old, and
It's awesome.
I just was that I was so focused on creating a show, getting it made, getting it greenlit to a first season. All those things happened for me, and it was wonderful. It was amazing. And it was so early in my career, and I was really young as an executive producer, and I had to fight for that credit and everything. But the thing that I really realized was how lucky I was, and that um, how rare that was as a 27-year-old, and that I didn't have a ton of experience. So I once I've made my show, a couple of my friends were like, "Well, where are you going to go from here? You're an executive producer now." And I said, "I got to learn how to produce." So my next gig was as a researcher on Let's Make a Deal for NBC.
Nice.
And I came in and I was like, I'm just here to learn. I didn't want to saddle myself with like the executive producer credit and be like, he's an executive producer. I needed to work, dude. I had to pay the bills. So on that show, though, I worked my way up, and I was a crucial part of making that series. And so I ended up becoming a show producer and getting promoted pretty quickly on that show. And that was an NBC credit and all that. But I look back on that and I share that often because, you know, once you achieve something in your career, the last thing you should do is saddle yourself with
Yeah.
that. Then it's an albatross and you go, well, I'm an executive producer now. Well, and we see this across the board in our industry right now. People who are like, well, I was a showrunner and I'm not going to take anything less than that. And I go, well, you either want to work or you don't.
Yeah. Yeah.
So for me, I just feel like I'm always employable. I'll always be the best. Put me at the fry guy station. I'm going to make the best French fries in the McDonald's. Like, I don't care. I just want to do a great job. And for whatever reason, that has positioned you and me in a place in life where we're sort of hireable and we're good colleagues and we deliver at a really high level. That's all I do.
I think it's a generation thing. I think it's where, but you're right. I mean, any task that I do, any job that I do, I want to do it to my best, to my ability.
Yeah.
I never want to do anything half-ass. I always want to do it to the best. And it seems like a lot of people half-ass things. They never want to do things to the best of the ability to make themselves look good. Period.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a generation thing where you're right. It's like, we grind, we get shit done. Like, if it needs to get done, you do it. You figure out a way to do it. You don't figure out a way how not to do it.
Yeah, I think though that there are exceptions, right? I do think generationally there's probably a degree of that, but I also look for people who are self-starters, who hold themselves to a higher standard than I could possibly hold them because that's how I am. And, I find them. I just had an interaction with a new colleague who's fantastic and she just brought it, man. Like, I was so inspired by her. She's probably 26, 27, really great at her job, but also I said to her, I said, look, you're great at your job and your talent is really off the charts. That's what gets you in the door. But what keeps you here is your work ethic. What keeps you here is the fact that you're willing to roll up your sleeves, get this thing done, hit deadlines, and not complain about it and just show up. And I just love that. So it does exist in the younger generations. I think it's important for us to kind of like look for that, celebrate that, because then of course their contemporaries will see their success and be inspired by it.
It's like just being an adult. Be an adult. That's what I say sometimes. And when I get hired, I'm like, look, at the end of the day, I'm an adult. If you ask me to do something, it's going to get done. You don't have to question it. You don't have to, double question it. It's going to get done because I'm an adult. Because I get things. I do what adults do. Is like, So it's so hard when that doesn't happen. But when it does happen, when you have a wheel of adults and we're all cogs, and that wheel just moves really nice and smooth, and everything's functional. So it's harmony. Right, it's harmony when it happens. But before we go, before we go into what you're doing now and the new wave of the industry, I want to get your take on the industry and see what your thoughts on how you think it's going to bounce back, if at all, and the direction it's going. Which I think I know what you're going to say.
Yeah, I mean, I think that for those who are waiting for the industry to bounce back, I am nervous for them. I don't think it's going to bounce back. I think that
Yeah.
we are, reality TV was a genre of entertainment that was very dominant for about a decade and a half. It came in at a time when unscripted programming was this sort of like magical new type of storytelling. And of course, Big Brother, Survivor, even Who Wants to Be a Millionaire as a game show, like those were the shows that were the beginning of reality TV. And then, we went through a good 10, 15 years of like unbelievable, productivity and making all these unscripted shows. It's ironic to me that the industry is in the state that it's in, where the business model behind networks is just not there and the audiences are dwindling. It's ironic that they're not doing more unscripted television because it's affordable.
Right.
And we know that content is king, and yet these networks have really taken their eye off that ball. So what we're going to see is a continued consolidation. I think what we're going to see is, streaming is still negatively impacting the volume of content that's getting made because, these libraries are getting deeper and deeper, and there still is so much unwatched content. So, unfortunately, I don't think that our industry is going to recover the way that we hope it would. I think it will settle into, frankly, what it is, probably a little bit better than what it is right now, where every channel is going to have a couple of shows. They're going to, keep trying these things, but they're just few and far between. So we're in a reckoning right now. And it's what we're unfortunately seeing is that, a lot of people who had dedicated their careers to this are going to have to pivot and figure out what else to do.
Does it
where to
feel
apply their skills.
Does it feel like there's still no one buying content, therefore there's no one selling content?
Yeah, there's no buying happening.
Okay.
Our industry, our marketplace is dead. I mean, and I'm just, I've been selling television for, 20 plus years, and I've never seen a marketplace that was as dead as this. I mean, I don't even know how to say it. You see these executive teams now overseeing 4 or 5 networks.
Yeah.
And there's you could come in with a slam dunk and they still just go, oh, it's not right for us or whatever. What they're not really saying, Donnie, we used to, when they told us it wasn't right for us or for the network, it's because they had a big meeting and they went through and they, considered all these different projects. And for whatever reason, the project that, didn't get picked up in the context of what was pitched that week just didn't have as much luster to it, right? Well, now the last thing they're going to say is, we don't have the money to buy these shows anymore. They're not going to say that. They need to keep the pitches coming in, but they just don't have the resources to greenlight these shows anymore, which is why I think branded entertainment is going to, start to become the primary funding vehicle for unscripted shows. And I'm not convinced that those shows are going to live in the traditional environments, cable and streaming. Netflix is obviously thriving, but what about these other streamers? When you look at YouTube is the dominant platform in all of entertainment. More people watch YouTube than any other platform. They're neck and neck with Netflix in terms of revenue and profitability. And frankly, for those of us who have kids under 20, if you ask them what do they watch, they don't say television. They say, I watch YouTube.
They don't even know what the stations are, what the major networks are, right?
Right. And now we're seeing an older audience, 60 and above, who is the second largest audience for YouTube programming. This was just in the last 2 weeks. So it's an evolution. Just like the evolution of entertainment embraced unscripted programming, now the evolution of entertainment is embracing what was called the user-centric era, coined by Evan Shapiro, the media analyst. And he says, you know, for the first time in media history, the user is completely in charge and they can bounce around wherever they want. They can, have programming and algorithms that understand what they're looking for and then serves them up new stuff. And a lot of this is on YouTube. So we have to adapt. We have to grow and become comfortable in those environments, making short form content, making lower production value content. But, it still means we're creating entertainment. It's just being delivered in a different method.
Branded content, man. I keep reading that's, brands are going to be coming to content creators on YouTube a lot more this year. So,
well, just talking about the evolution, right?
Yeah, the evolution.
And the fact that the medium is changing. I mean, I just think we are uniquely set up to adapt to the changing medium because YouTube itself, much like the dawn of reality TV, it's a more efficient production model.
Totally.
We know how to do that in unscripted. We know how to create content for lower prices, lower budgets than scripted, right? And so if we can figure out what that production model looks like, which is what we're doing at Yum Crunch, we can really create a lot more content and then distribute it across the available channels that, arguably this is the most distributed time in media history, meaning, this is the largest distribution engine in the history of media. And what's so cool about it is that there is no barrier of entry for storytellers who want to create content, on YouTube and in social video. I mean, literally, you can create a podcast, you can shoot on your iPhone, you can, with very, very minimal expense, start creating content and putting it up there and seeing how the audience relates to it. A lot more complicated than it sounds, but ultimately, in terms of building an audience, but in terms of the technical hurdles, they are non-existent now. So, but the thing is, Donnie, is like, I think that, our contemporaries who understand story, who understand the behind the scenes, who understand what it's like to put on a show. And, if we can wrap our heads around these creators as the new on-camera talent and, become their allies and their collaborators, there's a thriving business there, which is exactly what our business model is at Yum Crunch in food media. It is based on the realities of viewing behavior now and consumption of content. It is based on this premise that the next generation of Emeril Lagasse's and Martha Stewart's and Bobby Flay's and Guy Fieri's, they're going to come from the creator economy. They're not going to be anointed by a cable network.
Yeah.
And in fact, they're not only the new faces, they are also the channels. So if we can identify the talent who is building an audience and become their collaborator, that is where our business and our careers will start to thrive again. So it's not as elusive as we think. We just need to refocus on who's killing it in unscripted and what kind of stories we want to tell.
Are you saying like collaborating is bringing those said influencers into shows that you have on your channel? So you're like kind of crossbreeding since they already have their own channel?
What I mean is that they have their channels and they all want to upgrade. Most creators have built their audiences on one type of programming, one type of content. So they're limited and they want to do more, but they don't know how. So in food media, I'll give you examples. We work with creators who have only ever done like the ASMR hands only videos, but they are very personable. And so I now work with those types, helping them talk on camera. Like,
oh, shit.
Where we literally, put a 3 or 4 camera setup around them, and then I'll direct them and help them find their voice on camera so that they can become what is essentially a TV personality.
Wow.
that's a skill that only we have. Like we
Yeah.
can work with these real people to help them find their voices like we have done in reality shows for our entire careers. Now we just do that with creators and help them expand the kinds of stories that they're telling into different formats and things like that.
And I mean, I just wanted to touch base on money wise because it's all boils down to the money. You're essentially cutting out the middleman, right? The production, the network,
Yeah,
and it's direct to consumer.
that's right. Yeah.
See,
And when you do that, you're cutting out the costs of those networks too, right? I maintain that the reason our industry has collapsed is because it was so expensive to work with a network. Network execs, network processes, the legal, all these things are completely removed in the creator economy. You don't have some third party noting the thing you did. You make the thing, you put it up, the audience tells you how you did. That's right. That goes back to live entertainment.
and you're not under the time constraints either. Like a
Yeah.
waiting. It's like when you have something and you're ready to go, you can hit go and do it and make it happen.
And you're right. So this person who did programming, that job is obsolete now, right?
Yeah.
Like when they used to do scheduling, remember those
Oh god,
teams?
that sucked. Oh, those
You
meetings are
know,
horrible. Yeah.
that doesn't exist anymore because everything is on demand. So it's not, there's some live feeds still going on and there's still some schedulers and programmers out there, but the vast majority of entertainment now is on demand. So what's the use of that person? And then creators, the authenticity of creator voices, that's what builds those audiences. So the last thing these creators need is some lawyer or network executive, development executive, whatever it is, going, no, make it blue. Like that's not a thing in the creator economy. So you just, we all have to wrap our heads around that and then be the creative partner to these creators and help them behind the scenes develop the concepts, shoot it really well, and then, be there as they deploy this content so that you can react quickly to what works and leave behind the things that don't.
That's very cool. So you have your channel. And then in that channel, do you have your playlists? And are those playlists different niches or sub niches that you have?
So what we do at Yum Crunch is our consumer facing content channel.
Okay.
I also have My World Chef, which is like an experiential division of our food media company. What I'm doing at Yum Crunch is I'm reimagining food media and I'm making it edible. The idea is that if you make a good food show, you're making your audience hungry. So the next best thing you can do for them is feed them. And with social commerce, I can use all these different tools available so I can actually help that viewer taste the food they're seeing. So we were talking about how to adapt to this environment. And I think what it comes down to is, we are valuable to these creators and to these creator businesses by bringing structure and professionalism into the mix. Because we're makers, we are the ones who have made these shows. We're the ones who know how to pull this off. We know how to do it behind the scenes while we're shooting it, and then also post these shows. So those of us who are doers in that space, I think are going to be, and continue to be valuable. The ones who were sort of adjacent, those are the ones who I think are going to have a harder time figuring out their place in the creator economy because they're just not necessary in a user-centric era where the best channels are the creator channels. So to answer your question about Yum Crunch, I don't believe that the next media companies are going to be corporate media companies. I actually believe the next media companies are going to be creator companies. So Yum Crunch, I'm not trying to grow the Yum Crunch audience and be the next Food Network. I believe the next Food Network is all the different creator channels. But we're sort of like Interscope Records where we have all these artists that we work with, but their channels are where their audiences find them. And we are the support behind the scenes as a sort of white label creative and business development partner to them. Over time, I know my Yum Crunch channels will grow, and they are. I've got about 85,000 followers.
Congrats.
But ultimately, I'm not trying to grow that channel. My job is to make sure that the content I'm making with these creators is being accepted by their audience, and that in turn, brings more sponsors to the table, and that's how that flywheel gets spinning.
That's pretty smart. That's a good flywheel to have, man. Wow. Well done, Mike. So can you just touch real quick before I got just a couple of quick questions I got to ask you. They're kind of
Sure.
fun. I just wanted to know about Ugly Brothers as well and what you did there, because I know we briefly talked about that and some of the Emmy nods that you had, but if you could just get a little more into it, because it's pretty fucking cool what you and Tim accomplished with Ugly Brothers, man. I mean,
Thanks, man. Yeah, so we launched Ugly Brother in 2014. It was launched as a company name because we're twins, as you know, and our cousin said, if you guys ever create a production company, you should call it Ugly Brother. And then people will be like, which one's the ugly brother? And then you can point at each other. And he was totally right. That's how it went for years and years and years. But ultimately, what we wanted to do with Ugly Brother was create a boutique production company that was feeding our souls. And in the beginning, the first few years, we had to just do whatever we could sell. After making some shows that didn't feed our souls, our father passed away. He had gotten sick. And so we kind of looked at each other and were like, life is short. What are the things that we care about the most? Let's just focus on those and say no to everything else. So we decided it would be comedy, music, food, and family programming. And once we identified those 4 buckets, it really put us on a path that was very focused and really did feed our souls. We were able to make these wonderful shows that were very successful at a time when the industry was still waning and all that stuff. So we didn't get a lot of second seasons, but we were able to make a bunch of really cool food shows. And luckily, we made one with Emeril Lagasse called Eat the World on Amazon that was nominated for 5 Emmys and 4 James Beard Awards. We won Outstanding Culinary Series and Single Camera Editing. So we've won 2 Emmys, and we won those, the year that my dad died. So he got to see us get these awards. That's what we care about the most, is that our dad, it meant everything. And so, but we also became known for our food shows, and we did comedy, and like I mentioned, Comedy Jam, Top Elf on Nickelodeon. We made these really great shows that we are so proud of. But it was obvious to me that the industry was changing pretty dramatically, and I knew early on. I've always been a student of the industry globally and understanding international formats and seeing which way the winds are blowing. And I saw that coming, many years ago. And so I knew we had to pivot. Food became the thing that we became known for because we had also gotten nominated for 4 more Emmys for Fresh, Fried, and Crispy on Netflix. People really loved our shows. And so I looked at Tim and I said, well, content commerce is going to be the thing. Like, the best way to fund your content in the future is going to be when you can, create a show that is self-sustaining and drives its own revenue cycle. So I looked at comedy, music, family, and food, and I said food is the most visceral of these genres. Because, if you make it well, you're making your audience hungry. So that's where Yum Crunch was born. Reimagining food media as a content commerce flywheel, and working with creators to feed their audiences and entertain them.
Did you go right to YouTube? Is that what your first platform was?
No, we actually we thought that a subscription video service that you could watch a food show and then purchase a meal kit, that was the original construct. It was called World Chef. But we realized pretty quickly that audiences it was a live platform. They didn't want to cook along live. We realized that we were actually working against ourselves by putting anything behind a paywall. So I pivoted away from that very quickly. I said to Tim, I'm like, YouTube's the thing. If the generation is coming on and they're getting this content for free, why would we think that putting it behind the paywall is going to be an effective business model? So we quickly pivoted away from that and pivoted away from live, and it was the right call. Now I've made 300 episodes in the last 3 years. We've done 140 million views on our content.
Damn.
We've grown our audience from nothing to, like I said, 85,000. So we're succeeding. We're learning how to do this in social media, and we're applying the things that we learn every time we make something based on the actual audience response. And it's a wonderful way to create content. And it goes right back to my days as a stand-up comedian, because the audience never lies. You have
Yeah.
to appeal to the audience. It's not about appealing to a network executive. It's about appealing to an audience. And for me, that's a coming home and a sweet spot for me. So I love it.
That's what I'm learning in this. Is it's appealing to people that are going to watch this, not just me and my friends that I started making this for, because
Exactly.
ultimately my friends, they're going to watch one and then be done. The audience will keep watching it from now on. So
Without a doubt.
that's some good insight. Thanks. So I just have a couple of questions before I let you go here. Just really quick, fun questions, so you can shoot me an answer quick. You don't have to think about it too much, Mike. Don't dwell on it. So if aliens abducted you and asked you to describe Earth using only 3 movie titles, which ones would you pick? 3 movie titles.
Idiocracy, and Idiocracy.
Fucking so right, man. That's probably the best answer that I've had. You're so right. Okay, cool. If you had a theme song that played every time you walked into a room, what would that be and why?
Let's hear it for the boys.
Ooh. You notice how I'm dancing right now? Because I'm
exactly.
Yeah.
I'm at a point, I'm a girl dad, but we're living at a time when masculinity has kind of, become a 4-letter word. And I believe that our world is a better place when we can embrace feminine and masculine. So I'm all about being a great man and being an example of that for my daughters and for young men and for my buddies.
I love that, man. God, it's what a great answer. Gonna make me cry, single tear. What's the weirdest and most unexpected job you've ever had before working in TV and film?
Oh, working in TV and film.
Or the weirdest thing you've seen or happened to you?
So remember Kathy Lee Gifford?
Oh yeah.
So Kathy Lee Gifford was, the co-host of the morning show with Hoda Kotb. Well, back before she did any of that, she was the host of a show called Surprise, Surprise, Surprise with Kathy Lee Gifford on, I think it was
that
CBS.
3? Was that 3 or 4? 3.
It was
Surprise,
three.
Surprise, Surprise. Okay.
Based on the British show called Surprise, Surprise. The network leveled it up and added a 3rd surprise. So Kathy Lee, I was a PA at the time. This was right after the Kids Hit the Darndest Things gig. And my job was as a runner, and I had to pick up, one day the production manager sent me out to pick up the coffee order for the entire production.
Muy importante.
And what she failed to tell me was that, in this order of coffee, of maybe 60 different, cups of coffee, was Kathy Lee Gifford's Frappuccino. And so I went out and I go to the wrong Starbucks at the other end of Sunset, finally make my way to the right Starbucks, pick up everything. There's giant bags. I run in. No cell phones at the time. I was getting paged. Like, where the fuck's Kathy Lee's coffee? And I'm like, wait, Kathy Lee's coffee is in this mix? So I go pick up the coffee. I get within earshot of Sunset Gower where we were shooting it. And I put my headset on and I hear the production manager going, Rebecca for Duffy. And I go, I'm here. And she goes, where's Kathy Lee's coffee? And I go, I have it. So I run in with the bags. I go into the production office. She starts tearing down the bags, and they're like 4 or 5 tiers of coffees. Sure enough, they had put Kathy Lee Gifford's frozen Frappuccino at the bottom of a coffee bag full of hot coffee. So of course it was just melted. So she looks at me and she goes, "You're taking this to Kathy Lee." Now at the time, Kathy Lee had a bit of a reputation because she had been caught manufacturing fashion products in some Asian country where they were using child labor. And she was also known to have a bit of a temper. So I was terrified. And I walk in, so she hands me the cup. She goes, "You need to bring this to Kathy Lee's green room." Come on, man. You're the one that ordered this. Why am I the guy that has to do it? She's like, I'm not dealing with Kathy. So I go in, knock on Kathy Lee's door, and I go, hey, I'm Mike. I'm a PA. I have your Frappuccino. I'm really sorry. It melted. And she goes, oh, honey, come here. Let me give you a hug. She
What?
could not have been sweeter.
What? Wow.
She goes, I don't even care about this. She goes, oh my God, you must have been terrified. You know, she could not have been sweeter.
Wow. It's a
So
nice to
it,
hear. You're like, okay, maybe she wasn't, maybe it's the other people making that up. It's always other people's people, right?
I think so. I think the lure and the mystique of these, celebrities sometimes takes on a life of its own. And that was the case with Kathy Lee.
That's so good to hear. I had a story before I asked this next question. I was in the Army, and I did some work at the White House, and we were there for the Clinton administration. The Emperor of Japan, or the Prime Minister. I mean, it was the Prime Minister of Japan. That's what it was in town. And so we did the state arrival, and the Prime Minister and Clinton go off to the Oval Office, and Hillary takes, the Prime Minister's wife and all the entourage and is touring around the White House. Well, a little while goes by, and I have to go back into the stateroom. You've been in the White House, right? You go in the front door.
I've actually never been.
What? From Philly? What? Oh my gosh. So anyways, you go in the front door, and you go in the front door, and there's a piano, and you go to the left, that's a stateroom. That's where we just were. I had to go and do something with the flag. So I go bebopping in, not thinking that anyone's in there because we're still on property. And there's Hillary with all of the Japanese entourage and her entourage. They're all talking around this piano. And I go walking in the front door, and everyone stops and turns and just looked at me. And I looked at them. I'm just like, I'm like, hi. And then Hillary and everyone, she's like, hi. And everyone's just kind of like, it was just a weird fucking moment. And then I made a left and beelined in. The reason I say that is because, there were stories about Hillary is where, back in the day, you weren't supposed to look at her when you were at the White House, or else she would tear into you. I don't know if it's true or not, but I didn't want to find out being some, Army E4 just bebopping around. So
Yeah, exactly. The last thing you want is to disrupt, the president and the first lady.
Yeah. Don't need that. One more question. You're given an ultimate budget to make the strangest reality TV show ever. What's the concept? It can't be Suburban Virgin. It cannot be about getting virgins laid because that's already been done.
And it can't be Coolio's Rules or
Nope.
Coolio and the Gang.
Yep.
It would be a makeover of the United States persona. I would do Queer Eye for the American Guy.
Ooh.
And I would pump a ton of wellness, a ton of self-discovery and realization, and I would make America sane again. And it would be called Make America Sane Again.
You heard it here on Go for Donnie. Make America Sane Again. I love it. And it'll be on a YouTube channel. It's not going to go to any of those fucking networks.
That's right. That's right.
That's awesome, Mike. And so last thing, what's next for Mike Duffy before I let you go? Because, they're always calling. When you go to Switchy Channel 2, I didn't even explain Switchy Channel 2 before we went, right? Where, because everyone has chatter. So you go back and you switch to Channel 2, and that's where you have your little chatter. But everyone else listens in. Everyone else goes back and listens, and then you switch back because you got back to channel. So, sorry, I should have explained Switch to Channel 2 a little better before we leave to go back to our channel. But until then, what is next for Mike Duffy?
What's next for me is I really do feel called to create a thriving, business, a thriving economy around this business. I'm working to create a new kind of media company that can employ all of our contemporaries, and show, show our industry that there is a path forward that is lucrative and sustainable. I think more sustainable than the last 20 years. It's just a matter of really figuring out where the money is and how to get these projects funded. And, so that's what's next for me is showing myself and my family, as well as, my industry colleagues, that there's a path forward that we're really well suited for, where we can thrive again. And so I have a lot of hope there, and I realize I'm called uniquely to create that path or to pave that road. So I'm focused on that, paving that road, creating a thriving business, and, hopefully be able to employ more and more of our industry friends so that we can get back to the fun stuff.
That's a good mission statement, and I will follow you all the way, Mike. I will make sure you throw some of that fairy dust back, and I'll just catch on to it and see if that helps my channel. But dude, I can't thank you enough for coming on and talking with me, sharing some fun stories, and giving us some insight to the industry, because I'm interested, because I'm in the industry that's failing right now, and I made the pivot to the creator content YouTube channel, so I'm trying to make that happen. I mean, the way I came about it, I'm not an editor, Mike. I'm not a camera operator. I don't put up lights. I don't know any of this shit. And so I just had to get thrown into it and learn it all. And it's so much fun. And I love doing it. I'm so glad I dipped my toes in the water, and hopefully, I'll be able to go for a nice swim or surf.
Well, Donnie, it's really a pleasure to be on your show. And I'm really proud that you have pivoted and become a creator yourself. It's needed. Your voice is really, really important. And I think that, the levity that you bring to it, the spirit of everything, the behind the scenes, this is, we've come through a really interesting time in entertainment, and what you're doing is chronicling that, but you're also using the new opportunities in media to self-distribute. And, the best thing that anybody can do is just put one foot in front of the other and continue creating. So I applaud what you're doing. And I'm just
thank you, Mike. It means
honored.
It means a lot coming from you. So I appreciate that, and I can't wait to see you in the future. And tell your wife I said hi too. I didn't ask about your wife, but tell your wife I said hi, and I hope to see you sometime soon. And thanks again for coming on, Mike. Just can't thank you enough. So we better get back to channel 2.
My pleasure, Donnie. Great to see you, brother.
All right, man. Later,
Production for Donnie.
Go for Donnie. Locations for Donnie. Go for Donnie.
Habitat for Donnie.
Go for Donnie. Hey, Donnie, what the hell are they doing?